Scorpios from Crimson Moon, and you're watching Brutally Delicious. For this episode, I'm going to show how to make smoked trout. First thing we're going to do is go try to catch some trout. We're in Baumholder, Germany, right by the military base here, the Rod and Gun Club. There's a small trout pond where I usually have good luck. And interesting piece of info, this is where Jeffrey Dahmer was stationed in the military in 1979, 1980. So we'll take a short drive to the pond now. Very small. Yeah, it's a lot bigger than mine. They don't get much bigger than that in here. It's a nice one. Corn's the trick. We're trying power bait, we're trying worms. Only thing we're getting really is corn. It's always different here. Last time it was old power bait. Small rainbow trout. We've been here 45 minutes. Other than that, a few small roach, road algon fish. It's not catch and release here, so it's pretty small, but still good for the smoker. So we're going to go ahead and put this guy out of his misery, dispatch him. And I'll show you quickly the best way to clean a trout, my preferred method. First we gut it. Put the knife into the vent here, in other words the ass. Not the sharpest knife. Cut all the way up. So about between the front dorsal fins, the front fins, I mean. Then you're going to go through these two slats here. It's basically where the tongue is. You cut all the way through, slice it, and here, grab it by the tongue, get a good grip underneath the jaw, and you pull. And that gets all the gills out. You can kind of get your finger in there to scoop it. For the crayfish. All that's left to do is there's this, people call it a bloodline, it's actually the kidney. You don't want that in there. So the best way is just use your fingernail to scrape it out. Rinse it off back in the pond a little bit if you want. Not a big deal. And that's all cleaned, ready to go. I'm going to put it in brine and then I'll show you how we do that and put it in the smoker. So first one, hopefully we get more. Alright, now we're ready to make the brine. First I'm going to show you how to make just the basic original brine. That's all you need is water, brown sugar, and salt. The salt should be sea salt, rock salt, just not iodized salt. So for this recipe you'll use 2 quarts of water, which is almost just a little under 2 liters, cup and a half of brown sugar, and a cup of rock salt or sea salt. And that's the brine right there, but you can add some more stuff to it if you like. So what we did is chopped up some onions, threw in a few bay leaves. We have a few spices we're going to add to it. But first we're going to mix the actual brine. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the sugar in. Salt. Mix it up a bit. The onion's already in there, so no big deal. Doesn't really matter what order you go in. And then the water. And basically you need enough to totally cover the fish when it's sitting. You want to let it brine for I do it overnight, so 24 hours is good. At least 10, 12 hours. The longer the better. You can do it a couple days. With the dry brine, I'm going to show that tomorrow. That only needs a couple hours for the frozen trout we still have in the freezer. You can also buy pre-made mixes to do this as well. You just want to make sure you follow the right ratios of salt and water and sugar, otherwise it's going to come out too salty. If you need more, just double the recipe basically. And so now I'm going to throw a little bit extra in here. We've got the onion already, some lemon, and I don't have a lemon zester. You can use the zest as well, but I'll squeeze out the lemon and just throw the peel and everything in there. Next, some garlic powder. And I'd say, it depends how much you like garlic. Half a tablespoon. I like garlic, so I'm going to throw maybe a tablespoon and a half in there. Some paprika. I'd say about a teaspoon. Bit of cayenne, put as much as you like, depends on how spicy you like it. I'm not afraid of cayenne. And finally, some black pepper. And again, that's, I'd say a teaspoon, half a tablespoon. I pretty much just eyeball it because I'm using a grinder. And the reason for brining is it's going to cure the meat. It takes the moisture out of the meat, so it's when you smoke it, it has a nice texture and preserves it. As I run the smoker, I'll kind of go through more of those details. So the brine's all prepared. I'm just going to mix it up really good. Another important thing is you don't want to brine the fish in a metal container. You can use plastic, Tupperware, you can use glass, just don't use metal. I'm not sure exactly why, but it has some kind of reaction, I think, that is not desirable. And basically, like I said, I'm going to go through the smoking process when I get the smoker started, but you want to smoke them pretty low. If you can do cold smoke, that's great. Fish these size, I try to go under 100 degrees Celsius, which is 195 Fahrenheit, something like that. And I usually start out slower, and then at the last, for these fish, I'd say about 4 hours, 5 hours. And towards the last couple hours, I'll bring the temperature up higher till it's reached cooking temperature. One way to tell when, this works with a lot of fish, when it's ready, is you just take the dorsal fin and pull it. And if it pulls out really easily, that's usually a sign it's ready. If you cook them too hot, or smoke them too hot, I should say, you don't want to cook them, you want to smoke them. It's too hot, you're going to get these weird white blotches coming out. That's like the proteins coming out. It's not bad, it's better if you smoke them a lot cooler than that. So that's it. Now we will make sure all the fish is submerged. We're putting it in a bowl for the video. Normally what I'll do is just put these in big Ziploc bags, burp all the air out so they're completely covered, and every time I think about it, I'll go and kind of stir them up a bit to make sure it's the brine is getting to all parts of the fish. But this is just the right amount to do all these fish. After they've been in the brine overnight, the next step is to dry them out to get the moisture off. So there's a few methods of doing this. One of the best ways, I think, is if you get a sort of a rack on a tray and place them out over the rack, and you can put it in the fridge for a few hours that way to totally dry off. if there's moisture in them, when you smoke them, you're going to end up steaming them. So that's it. These are ready. And they're going to go into the fridge now until I'm ready to run the smoker tomorrow. All right, so we did the wet brine. Now we're going to look at the dry brine. Dry brine is good if you're using frozen fish. We have a few trout left over from the freezer from last time fishing. You can use it on fresh fish as well, but if you're using frozen fish, you want to use a dry brine. Otherwise, when you put it in the smoker, it's going to come out really mushy and soggy. The main things you're going to need, again, is just salt and sugar. So here I have 3 cups of light brown sugar and 3/4 cup of kosher salt. Kosher salt, iodized salt, non-iodized salt, is fine. That's your basic brine. That'll work right there. Then I have some spices to add to it. In here I've got a tablespoon of onion powder, tablespoon of garlic powder, half a tablespoon of black pepper, and about a teaspoon or so of cayenne pepper. You can play around with the ratios as you like, but that's a good kind of starting point to try out. So put it all into a bowl and then just mix it up. Basically just trying to get the spices you put in evenly distributed through the mix. Some of those lumps of the brown sugar out. It's not a big deal though. That's fine. Alright, so next you want to get a container, flat container, Tupperware, anything but metal. So I have a ceramic container. And first you want to make a layer of your brine mix at the bottom for the fish to sit on. And we've got 3 rainbow trout here, which are cleaned the same way I did on the last, for the fresh ones we just caught. And since there's cavities inside, I'm going to actually drop some of this in the inside as well. Don't worry about putting too much. You want to kind of cover it all. It's going to, think of it like a rub you'd put on ribs or something like that. And if you had more fish than this, well, we actually have a small crucian carp here as well, so we're gonna go ahead and smoke that as well. You can make layers, so you put fish, dry brine, fish, dry brine, and just layer it like that. There's our trout done. And finally the crucian carp. Alright, so just a little bit left, so I might as well just pour it all in there. Goes on dry, and usually I'm going to put it in the fridge, cover it with some plastic wrap, and put it in the fridge. After about an hour or so, you're going to see it starts turning to liquid. It's going to draw out all the fluid in the fish. And eventually it's going to turn into a liquid. You want to leave this, usually at least, minimum 4 or 5 hours. I'm going to leave it overnight. You can leave it a few days. I'm not going to leave it overnight. Okay, so this is the dry brine that was sitting overnight. And actually it was cold enough here, just a little bit above freezing, so I could leave it outside. And you'll see it's drawn out a lot of the liquid from the fish. It was just a dry brine originally, and that's going on. So I'm just kind of mix these up a little bit and leave them a little longer. And then the next step is to just kind of get off as much of this sugar and salt. You can rinse it or you can just scrape it off with your fingers, and then put these to air dry for a bit. And brine, the dry brine and the wet brine. Now it's time to dry them out. What I do is put a toothpick or two inside to open them up like this. That's good for the smoking process because it just allows the smoke to get in easier. It's also going to help dry them faster. To dry them, you can hang them and put a fan in front of it. Just that'll speed it up a bit. Another helpful thing to speed it up is you can pat them dry with a paper towel. But what I'm going to do is, if you have a convection oven, is turn the fan on and turn the oven on to the lowest setting and keep the door either cracked open or open all the way. So we don't want to cook them yet. We just want to dry them out. So I'm going to pop these in the oven. And if you have racks to put them on, that's much better than just putting them on a flat surface. And I'll go ahead and turn on just the fan. And I only want the fan. That's the only thing I'm using the oven for. So I'm not turning any heat on. The more air you give it, the quicker it's going to go. Or you can just kind of leave it cracked. And about 2 hours like this is good. What I'm going to do is every half hour I'm going to turn them and then flip them over to dry them as thoroughly as I can. What you're looking for is pellicle to form, which is basically, it's going to be like this sticky, it'll be sticky to the touch. Right now they're not. They're starting to, because these were out for a little bit. These definitely not. Once it starts getting sticky to the touch, that's that pellicle forming, which is going to make it much better for smoking. You can skip this whole process. I mean, you could just take them directly out of the brine, rinse them off, and throw them in the smoker. This is going to take more time, but it's going to make it a lot better. So yeah, I'm going to have these in here for probably 2 hours. And since I'm going to run the smoker tomorrow, what I'm going to do is then put them in the fridge to dry a little bit further, and then they'll be ready tomorrow for the smoker. Okay, so now it's time to start the smoking process. What I'm going to do here is start with cold smoke. Cold smoke is basically, I believe it's anything under 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So you're not actually cooking it with heat, you're just smoking it. And I'm going to do this for probably the first hour or so, just to get a nice smoke flavor absorbed into the meat. Then I'll actually start slowly bringing up the temperature. So I'll come back a few times to show the process. But to start out, I'm going to try something a little new this time. And that's basically a homemade cold smoke generator. To do this, you just take like a sieve or something and bend it kind of inwards like that. Basically, you just want like a area here, circular area. You can line it up with wood chips or wood dust or wood pellets. You don't want to make a complete circle. You want to leave a break, because the idea is you start it at one end and it's slowly going to smoke and smolder all the way to the end. All I've got here right now are wood chips, so I've got to just give it a try and see if it's going to work. If it doesn't work, what I'll probably do is just put just a couple coals under it, because I don't want the temperature up high at first. To begin, I'm actually going to go ahead and put the fish on the smoker. What I normally do is put the bigger pieces closer to the heat source. I'm going to eventually have the heat in the firebox here. The smaller fish will be further back because they don't take as long. And yeah, these have been drying overnight. I dried them in the oven like I showed you, and then dried them overnight in the fridge, so they're looking very good at this point. And I'm using this smoker today. I've got 3 or 4 of them, just because it's bigger.
Vertical smoker works fine. Even those cheap bullet smokers, they all do the trick. You can make your own. I mean, if you look up videos on YouTube of how to make your own smoker, there's really easy ways, even as simple as just using a barrel, or not a metal can. But even with a cheap smoker, there's a lot of little tricks you can find on YouTube, etc., where you're gonna modify it to make it work better. Basically, like even with this one, I put some rubber gasket around anywhere where the heat can escape, where you see smoke coming out. That's like a high temperature silicone, basically, that's not going to melt. They make them for, I think, car engines. So I mean, double check on that stuff to make sure you're not going to be cooking anything toxic into your food. So yeah, I got the wood chips. These are hickory. You can use whatever you want. Hickory is going to be a lot stronger, but I don't mind that. A lot of people like a milder smoke for fish, like alder or apple, or a lot of the different fruit, pear, whatever. But I like the smoky flavor. Smoking food is one of my favorite ways of cooking, to be honest. So as you see, I made kind of like a crescent shape. And to get this started, some people put like a tea light under it, a candle, and leave it there until it starts at one end. I'm going to go ahead and just start it here just to keep it out of the wind, and then I'll probably move it to the firebox once it gets going. So I've got one of these butane torches. I'm going to try to start it with that. Once I start bringing the temperature up, I'm going to gradually, slowly bring it up. So this process, it's going to take a bit longer, but it's worth it. I'm probably going to be at it for a good 4, 5, maybe 6 hours. With smoking, that's the saying, slow and low. And that always turns out with the best results. After I start putting a heat source in the firebox, a few coals, I found these to be really useful. It's a smoking box, a wood chip box. It's just a stainless steel box with some holes in it. And you put the wood chips in there so they don't ignite, they just smolder. If you don't have one, you can also just wrap them in foil. A lot of places will tell you to soak the wood chips first. I think that's bullshit. When you soak them, it doesn't really do much, and you have to soak them more than a couple hours. It'd be like 24 hours to make any difference. And all it's going to really do is just create steam. If you have a problem with the wood chips burning, just wrap them in foil or use a box like this. So this looks like it's going to work okay so far. I'm going to have to babysit it because it's the first time using it. Check on it pretty frequently. These are also great, a smoking chimney, charcoal chimney to start your coal. They work really good. And once I'm convinced this is going to burn okay, and it's already producing smoke, it looks like it's doing okay to me. So I'm going to go ahead and move it to the firebox. And go ahead and close this up. That's the only thing. This is not the best smoker. It does. The lid does not close tightly, so to prevent. At this point, it's not a big deal. I just want the smoke to go through. But to prevent heat from escaping, I usually put something in front of it just to like push it shut a little more, sealed around the edges. And so far, my cold smoke generator seems to be working like it should. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. With fish, I'm going to leave the vent here open on the chimney stack. When you're starting to work with the temperatures, that's where you got to experiment with your, I forgot what these things are called. The vents, so they could open full or halfway. You got to mess with those and keep an eye on the temperature. So a temperature gauge is really important. And keep an eye on it, when you're first doing it. Especially, if you're using a gas smoker, it's a lot easier. I don't like that shit, though. I prefer doing it the real way with wood or coal. So that's it. And now we can start to see the smoke coming out. And that's how it should look. Not really thick and white. What's the term they call it? Clear blue smoke or something? It should be this translucent color. You should see something, but not like really thick smoke. That's going to usually taste bitter and bad. So it should be just smoldering wood like that. And yeah, I'll come back and check on this pretty frequently, like I said, because it's a new cold smoke generator I made. But normally a good hour or so of this is going to start getting that really nice thick smoke flavor into the fish or whatever you're smoking. Cold smoking, it's really good to do in the wintertime. I mean, if your temperature is getting too high, you can open it up, or you can put a tray of water or some ice cubes even in there next to the fire source to cool it down. But the colder weather helps too. It's pretty cold today. It's about just above freezing. So yeah, cold smoking, you can do all sorts of things, even smoking cheese so it doesn't melt. But this is going to be the beginning process just to really get that flavor in there, hopefully. And I'm going to come back after an hour or so of this, and then we'll start bringing the heat up with coals and adding more wood chips. All right, so it's been about 45 minutes. I just wanted to do a quick check on how this cold smoke generator is doing. Still a thin blue smoke coming out of the chimney stack, so that's good. And that is just how I wanted it to work, so perfect. 45 minutes. This looks like it could last for a good 4 hours, so that's really ideal for using it again in the future. We'll take a quick look. I think it's way too early for the smoke to take any color on this. Yep. And that's the saying with smoking, if you're looking, it ain't cooking. So close it back up. And we'll come back and check on it again. I'm going to leave it for as long as I can with the cold smoke, because that always has a better result. So these have been on cold smoke for a few hours now. I left them a little longer because I have enough time today. And I've got, I don't know, I think about 15 charcoal briquettes ignited in the firebox. So I'm going to throw the wood chips in this steel box right on top of that. And this is the point where I start gradually bringing up the temperature. I throw on some cheese here, just some goat cheese slice, so not the most ideal cut, but I'm going to take those off pretty soon. They've gotten enough smoke and I don't want them to start melting. Now the temperature's definitely warming up. I can feel it. With cold smoke, you can put your hand in front of it and you'll feel it's not hot or just really slightly warm. So yeah, now this process is going to be gradually bringing the heat up. I'm going to let this smoke at a higher temperature, close the top to keep the heat in, and continue to bring the temperature up until they're done. So it's maybe a couple hours left, really. I'm going to drag it out, because the longer you take with the stuff, the more it pays off. And I'm not really in a rush, so I can afford that luxury right now. Alright, so finally at the final stages. I've been smoking it for hours, and now I'm going to bring it up to temperature. So I'm getting a hot fire started in the firebox. You can see it start to, hopefully you can see with the lack of light, it's taking on a good color. And I'm going to let this fire burn a little bit before I close the firebox. I don't want the temperature going up too fast, too quickly. And the goal is to get an internal temperature in the fish of about 160 Fahrenheit. So probably another hour it'll be ready and I can eat. Okay, so it finally should be ready. Let's take a look. And yeah, it's looking quite good. So time to take this out of the smoker and go plate it up and eat it. And this has been, I took a lot longer than I really had to, but I did it really slow, then mild heat, then medium heat, then at the very end I brought the temperature up. So now they're perfect. Another trick is, if you're getting a problem getting the temperature up to where you're comfortable eating it, once you've smoked it for a few hours. You can always just put it in the oven. It's going to still have that smoke flavor. But honestly, if you just do it this way, the right way, it'll maybe take a little longer and it's better. All right, let's go eat. Okay, it's plated. It was some homemade Kartoffelsalat, some potato salad. So let's go ahead and give it a try. If it's cooked right, the skin will just peel right off. And the fillets come right off the bone. It's still hot. Just get a piece to try. Make sure it's edible. Came out perfect. That's it. A few hours of work, but worth it.